strap snaps first. A thin thread of white ribbon is the only thing holding Nia Rowan's sandal together, and right now, in front of 200 guests dressed in silk and gold, that ribbon is losing the fight. She feels a give under her weight on the stone path. Not a full tear. A give. The kind of small failure that promises more is coming. Somewhere behind her, a phone rises into the air. Then another. Then 5 more, all at once, all pointed at her feet like she's the only thing worth filming at a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. Nia keeps walking. Welcome if this is your first time here. This is the kind of story where the people who deserve applause get laughed at first, and the people clapping loudest end up leaving in disgrace. Stay through to the end, because what happens on this estate today will not stay buried. And if a story about quiet dignity meeting real justice is the kind you come back for, you already know what to do before we go further. Now back to the wedding. The estate rises behind her like something built to remind people they are small. White columns stretched 3 stories high. Iron gates polished so hard they catch the afternoon sun and throw it back into the crowd. Somewhere past the hedges, string lights wait for nightfall, thousands of them, hung the night before by a crew that worked until 3 in the morning to get every bulb even. None of that belongs to her. Not really. Not in the way the woman in the front row seems to. Believe it does, the one already leaning toward her husband with her hand cupped over painted lips. Nia's dress is simple, ivory lace her grandmother helped her hem the week before, no designer label sewn into the collar, no borrowed jewelry catching the light. Cost less than the flowers on a single table inside the reception tent. She chose it anyway because it was hers, paid for with her own money, fitted by her own hands, and there is a kind of peace in that no amount of laughter can touch. She couldn't even afford new shoes for her wedding? The words don't stay a whisper. They carry the way cruelty always finds a way to carry, riding the breeze straight to Nia's ears like they were aimed there on purpose. She doesn't flinch. She learned a long time ago that flinching is exactly what people wait for. Instead, she looks down at the ribbon wrapped twice around the broken strap, ties a tighter knot with fingers that don't shake, and straightens back up. Behind her, the yellow tricycle that brought her here idles at the curb, balloons taped to its handlebars, a handwritten just wetted sign flapping against the side panel. Looks like a joke parked outside a mansion. Some of the guests are already treating it like one. A group of women near the marble fountain laugh into their champagne glasses. One of them raises her phone higher, angling for a better shot of the sandal, of the tricycle, of all of it, already picturing the caption she'll write later tonight. An older man in a cream suit shakes his head and mutters something to his wife that makes her cover her mouth. A teenage boy nudges his friend and points, not even trying to hide it. Somewhere off to the side, a string quartet keeps playing like nothing is wrong, bows moving in perfect time while 200 people quietly decide how much this bride is worth. The smell of white roses drifts across the courtyard, heavy and sweet, mixing with the sharp bite of champagne and the faint smoke of a cigar someone lit too early. Beneath all of it, Nia can still smell the rain that fell that morning, clinging to the stone under her broken sandal. Near the front, a young woman in a pale blue dress, the only bridesmaid Nia asked to stand with her, presses a hand to her mouth, not from laughter but from something closer to horror. She takes a step forward like she wants to say something, do something, and then Usher gently pulls her back into place. Nia doesn't look at any of them. She looks at him. Callan Mercer stands at the end of the path in a plain gray suit, no tie, hands loose at his sides. Every other man on this property is dressed like he's auditioning for a magazine cover. Callan looks like he borrowed his jacket from a stranger and forgot to check the mirror before he left. And he isn't laughing. That's the part nobody in the crowd seems to notice. While 200 guests point and snicker at a torn sandal, the groom stands completely still, watching his bride walk toward him like she's the only person on the property worth watching at all. A few feet from the fountain, an older man in dark sunglasses lowers them just enough to study Callan. Not the bride. Callan. His eyes move over him the way a man studies a signature before deciding whether to trust it. Nia doesn't see this. She's too busy keeping her chin level, one foot in front of the other, ribbon holding, floor getting closer with every step. The laughter climbs higher. A child, maybe 6 years old, tugs on her mother's sleeve and asks, loud enough for half the courtyard to hear, "Mommy, why are her shoes broken?" The mother doesn't answer. She just smiles, the tight, uncomfortable smile of someone enjoying the show more than she's willing to admit out loud. Near the back row, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat leans toward the bride's path and calls out, sweet as poison, "Sweetheart, do you need a few dollars for real shoes?" Her friends laugh so hard one of them has to set down her glass. Nia's throat tightens. Not from the shoes, from the years behind them. From every double shift, every skipped meal, every time she chose someone else's need over her own comfort, all of it arriving now at once, on a stone path in front of strangers who think a broken strap tells her whole story. It doesn't. A wealthy-looking woman near the aisle leans over to her friend, diamonds catching the light every time she moves her wrist. "I give it a year," she says, not bothering to lower her voice. "Men like him get bored of women like her fast." Her friend laughs so hard she has to steady herself on the back of a chair. Nia hears every word. She keeps her spine straight and her pace even, because bending now, even an inch, would give them exactly what they came for. Near the back gate, 3 black cars roll to a stop, engines cutting off in perfect sequence, and nobody in the laughing crowd turns to look. But the man in sunglasses does. He straightens his jacket, steps forward, quiet and quick. And for the first time since Nia arrived, he speaks, low enough that only the men beside him can hear. "Get ready. He's here." 2 more men in dark suits fall in line behind him without a single word passing between them, the kind of silent coordination that only comes from people who have rehearsed a moment like this before. One of them touches an earpiece. Another glances at his watch, then at the front doors of the estate, then back at Callan, still standing at the end of the aisle. Like none of it concerns him. It should concern him. Somewhere in the pit of Nia's stomach, a small, unfamiliar feeling stirs, the sense that she's standing inside something far bigger than a wedding, something with edges she can't see yet. Nia has no idea who he is. She has no idea the cars behind her didn't come for the reception. She has no idea that in the next few minutes, every person laughing at her sandals is about to find out exactly whose wedding they walked into. All she knows is that Callan is 3 steps away now, close enough that she can see the muscle working in his jaw, and he's still not laughing. Something in his eyes looks less like a groom about to marry the woman he loves and more like a man bracing for a storm only he can see coming. Behind her, the whispers turn into open laughter, and somewhere in that crowd, a phone camera catches every second of it, uploading in real time to an audience that has no idea what they're about to help expose. Nia takes her final step onto the platform. The ribbon on her sandal finally slips loose, dangling now against the stone, and for one long second, nobody laughs at all. The courtyard goes quiet the way a room goes quiet right before something breaks. Callan reaches out his hand, and instead of taking it the way every guest expects, he lowers himself, slow and deliberate, until one knee touches the ground in front of 200 people who came here to watch her fail. And that is exactly when the doors behind the fountain swing open. 2 years earlier, Nia Rowan stands behind a folding table at a community health clinic on the east side of Baltimore, holding a stranger's hand while a nurse draws blood from her other arm. The woman is crying. Not from the needle. From the diagnosis she got 20 minutes ago. "You're not alone in this," Nia tells her, and she means it the same way she's meant it every single time she said it to a stranger who walked in scared and walked out a little less scared because someone stayed. Nobody pays Nia to say things like that. Her job title is patient coordinator, and her job description doesn't mention holding hands or staying 20 minutes past her shift or remembering the names of people's kids. She does those things anyway because somewhere along the way she decided kindness without a reason is the only kind that counts. That night, like most nights, she drives straight from the clinic to a small brick house 11 minutes away, where her grandmother waits at the kitchen table with a puzzle spread out in front of her, hands trembling too much to fit the pieces together on her own. Nia doesn't say a word about the tremor. She just pulls out a chair, picks up a piece shaped like a cloud, and hands it to her grandmother to place, letting Odessa believe her hands did the work. Her grandmother taught her that kind of patience. Every Sunday of Nia's childhood, in a small kitchen that smelled like cornbread and bleach. Her grandmother Odessa Rowan set 2 plates on a table built for 4 and said the same thing, wiping flour from her hands onto an apron that had seen 20 years of Sundays just like it. "Money can buy attention, baby. Character earns respect. Don't you ever confuse the two." Nia was 7 the first time she heard it. She's 29 now, and she still hears it every time she's tempted to cut a corner. She grew up in that kitchen because her mother left before Nia turned 2, and her father was a name on a birth certificate and nothing else. Odessa raised her alone on a school cafeteria salary, stretching grocery money like it owed her something, teaching Nia to sew before she taught her to swim because torn clothes, Odessa said, should never be an excuse to throw something away. That lesson sticks. 22 years later, Nia still repairs her own clothes instead of replacing them, still keeps a sewing kit in her car, still believes a broken thing fixed with care is worth more than a new thing bought without thought. The clinic isn't the only place her grandmother's lessons show up. On a Thursday afternoon in the grocery store parking lot, Nia watches an elderly man count crumpled bills at the register, coming up short by $11 for a cart of canned soup and bread. The cashier waits, impatient, a line forming behind him. Nia steps up before she can talk herself out of it and hands over the difference without a word, then leaves before the man can catch her name. Every 8 weeks, she sits in a folding chair at the Red Cross donation van 2 blocks from her apartment, sleeve rolled up, watching the bag fill while she talks to whoever's next to her about nothing in particular. She's done it since she turned 17. She's lost count of how many times. Once, on a night colder than the forecast promised, she finds a man sleeping outside a boarded-up storefront wrapped in a jacket too thin for the wind. He tells her his name is Elijah, that he served 2 tours before the country forgot about him. Nia walks 3 blocks to the motel on Fulton Street and pays for a week. Cash, no questions, no photo for anyone's feed. None of this makes the news. None of it is supposed to. When Nia finished nursing school, a private hospital across town offered her a coordinator position. Nearly double the salary, better hours, a title with weight behind it. The recruiter called twice to make sure she understood what she was turning down. She understood. She turned it down anyway because her grandmother's hands had started shaking by then, small tremors first, then something the doctors called early onset Parkinson's, and the clinic schedule let her leave in time to drive Odessa to appointments 3 days a week. The private hospital wouldn't have given her that. No amount of extra salary would have bought back a Tuesday afternoon spent in a waiting room, holding her grandmother's hand while a doctor explained what stage 4 looked like on paper. Money can buy attention. It can't buy time back once it's gone, and Nia wasn't willing to trade what little time she had left with the only parent she'd ever known. So she worked 3 jobs some semesters back when she was still in school and the bills were already climbing. Grocery store mornings, tutoring afternoons, hospital cafeteria nights. She skipped her own graduation ceremony because it landed on the same day as one of Odessa's appointments, and there was no version of that choice where she picked the cap and gown over her grandmother's chair in a waiting room. Nobody clapped for that decision. Nobody filmed it. But it's the kind of decision that builds a person from the inside, brick by brick, whether anyone's watching or not. Which is exactly why what happens next, on an ordinary Tuesday 2 years before that wedding, matters more than it looks like it does. Nia is closing out the clinic register when a man walks in soaked from the rain, water dripping off a jacket that used to be expensive and now just looks ruined. He asks the front desk if anyone knows a mechanic nearby. His car died 4 blocks away. The receptionist barely looks up. 2 people in the waiting room glance at his shoes, decide he can't afford a tow truck, and go back to their phones. Nia stands up. She doesn't know his name yet. Doesn't know what he does, what he owns, or what he's hiding. All she sees is a stranger standing in a doorway, dripping onto clinic tile, looking more lost than his expensive haircut suggests he should. There's a shop 2 miles down, she says, already reaching for the clinic's landline. Sit. I'll call them. He sits. She calls 3 different mechanics before one agrees to send a truck the same day. She finds him a stack of paper towels, then an old phone charger from the lost and found drawer, then a cup of coffee from the pot that's been sitting since 7 that morning. He watches her do all of it without once checking her expression for what she might want in return. You don't even know my name, he says finally. Nia shrugs, wiping down a counter she's already wiped twice. Didn't ask for it either. You looked like you needed help. That was enough. Something shifts in his face when she says that. Small. Quiet. The look of a man who has spent years surrounded by people angling for something, finally sitting across from someone who isn't. Most people ask, he says, before they help. They want to know if it's worth it first. Then I guess I'm not most people, Nia says, not looking up from the counter. He almost smiles at that. Almost. It's the closest thing to a real smile he's given anyone in longer than he can remember. His name, she'll learn later that afternoon, is Callan. He doesn't tell her his last name. Doesn't mention a company. Doesn't explain why. 20 minutes after the tow truck arrives, 3 separate phone calls light up his cracked screen with names like Bored, Urgent, and Gareth. He silences all 3 without looking twice. Bad connection out here anyway, he says, which isn't true, and some part of Nia clocks that it isn't true, and decides it doesn't matter yet. When he thanks her before leaving, she waves him off with the same words she says to every stranger who walks through that door, scared, wet, or both. We all need kindness on bad days. She goes back to closing the register. He walks out into the rain, still holding a paper cup of clinic coffee like it's the best thing he's tasted in years. He comes back 3 days later. Says his car needed a follow-up check at the same shop, which isn't quite a lie, though it isn't quite the truth either. He brings 2 coffees this time, one for himself and one for her, and asks if she has 10 minutes to sit outside on the clinic steps. She has 10 minutes. Somehow those 10 minutes turn into 40. Somehow 40 minutes. On a Thursday turn into a standing coffee date every Sunday, then into long drives up the coast with the windows down and no destination picked out ahead of time, then into something neither of them says out loud for months because saying it out loud makes it real, and real things can be lost. Neither of them knows it yet, but that sentence, 7 simple words spoken by a woman expecting nothing, is about to follow Callan Mercer into boardrooms, into sleepless nights, into a decision that will eventually put him on a stone path 2 years later, kneeling in front of 200 laughing strangers. Because what Nia doesn't know, standing in that clinic with rain still pooling by the door, is that the man she just helped for free controls more money than most cities collect in a year. And what Callan doesn't know yet, watching her through the rearview mirror as the tow truck pulls his car away, is that he has just met the only person who will ever love him without knowing what he's worth. That part comes later. Right now, he's just a man in wet shoes, driving away with her name on his mind and no idea how to say goodbye to it, and no idea that the next time his car breaks down near that clinic, it won't be an accident at all. What Nia also doesn't know, closing up the clinic that night without a second thought, is why a man who claims to fix cars for a living has 3 missed calls from someone labeled bored, or why his silenced phone keeps lighting up again and again like it belongs to someone far more important than he's letting on. She'll wonder about it eventually. Right now, she just locks the door behind her and drives home to a grandmother who needs her more than any stranger's secrets ever could. The gavel doesn't exist in this room, but Gareth Mercer slams his hand on the table like there's one under his palm anyway. 6 months, he says, voice climbing over the hum of the air conditioning. 6 months of you disappearing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, missing calls, missing meetings, and nobody at this table is allowed to ask why. Callan Mercer sits at the head of a glass conference table 20 floors above downtown Baltimore, hands folded, face still. 11 board members watch him the way people watch a fire they aren't sure has gone out yet. I don't answer to a schedule you didn't build, Callan says. I answer to results. Check the quarterly numbers before you check my calendar. Gareth's jaw tightens. He doesn't like being right about something and still losing the room. He glances left and right, gauging which of the 11 faces around the table might side with him if he pushes further, and finds mostly careful neutrality staring back. Numbers are fine, Gareth says, pulling a folder toward himself like a man building a case. Nobody's disputing the numbers. What I'm disputing is a chairman who can't be reached. 4-6 hours at a stretch, twice a week, every week for the better part of a year. That's not a scheduling quirk. That's a liability, and this board has a responsibility to ask about liabilities. Then ask about the ones that matter, Callan says. Ask about the Denver acquisition closing 2 weeks ahead of projection. Ask about the fourth quarter numbers sitting on the table in front of you. My personal time isn't a line item on this company's balance sheet, and it never will be. A woman near the far end of the table, the company's chief financial officer, clears her throat and slides a folder toward Callan without a word, the kind of quiet loyalty that took years to earn and could vanish in a single bad quarter. Callan nods once, doesn't open it yet. Gareth leans back in his chair, arms crossed, studying his cousin with the patience of a man. who has decided to lose this particular argument today so he can win a bigger one later. What none of them know, none of the 11 people in this room dressed sharp enough to sell confidence for a living, is that the Tuesdays and Thursdays Gareth keeps circling belong to a woman at a community clinic who has no idea any of them exist. Nia doesn't know his last name is Mercer. Doesn't know the company logo on the building lobby downstairs is the same company that pays for the modest apartment he calls home, the one furnished like a man who shops at whatever store is closest instead of whatever store costs the most. Doesn't know that the black card in his wallet has a credit line larger than most towns. He likes it that way. He's liked it that way since he was 19 years old and learned the hard way exactly what happens when someone finds out the truth too early. His father built the company from a single office and a stubborn refusal to lose. Marcus Mercer Sr. started with 3 employees and a line of credit he nearly lost twice in the first 2 years, and by the time Callan turned 12, that single office had become 14 floors of glass and steel overlooking the harbor. His father used to bring him to the office on Saturdays, let him sit in the big chair behind the big desk, tell him that a name on a door means nothing if the man wearing it can't be trusted by the people underneath him. By the time Callan turned 20, his father was gone, heart giving out at a desk he refused to leave even for vacation, collapsing during a Tuesday afternoon call that nobody thought to interrupt until it was too late. The company landed in Callan's hands whether he was ready or not, along with a board full of men twice his age who spent the first 2 years waiting for him to fail so they could carve up what remained. He wasn't ready. He learned fast anyway because the alternative was watching everything his father built get carved up by people circling like Gareth is circling right now. The first girl he ever loved, back in college, found out who he was 3 weeks into dating and stopped asking about his day, started asking about his stock options instead, dressing it up in questions about his future that were really questions about hers. The second one lasted longer, almost 2 years, until Callan overheard her on the phone describing their relationship to a friend the way someone describes a job they're hoping gets a promotion attached to it, laughing about how patient she'd been, how the payoff would be worth it. Eventually. After that, he stopped introducing himself with his last name. Stopped mentioning the company unless someone already knew. Started driving a car with dents in the bumper and wearing suits that fit but never announce themselves, because the only way to know if someone actually likes you is to make sure they have no reason to fake it. By the time he walked into that clinic soaked from the rain, Callan Mercer had perfected the art of being invisible in plain sight. Nia broke that without trying. She didn't ask his last name. Didn't glance at his watch, the kind most people recognize even when they pretend not to. Didn't do the thing every other person in his life eventually did, which is treat kindness like a transaction with fine print attached. Weeks after their first meeting, their Sunday coffee turns into something neither of them planned. He shows up at the same corner cafe 2 blocks from the clinic, same booth, same order, until the barista starts making his coffee before he reaches the counter. "You're quiet today," Nia says one Sunday, stirring sugar into a cup she doesn't need sugar in, just something to do with her hands. "More than usual." "Board meeting ran long," Callan says, which is true and also nowhere close to the whole truth. "Rough day at the shop?" He almost laughs. The lie he told her that first day, the one about fixing cars for a living, has followed him for 6 weeks now, small and manageable at first, heavier every Sunday he doesn't correct it. "Something like that," he says instead. She doesn't push. That's the thing about Nia he can't stop noticing. She never pushes, never digs, never treats a closed door like something she's owed the key to. She just sits across from him in a booth that smells like burnt coffee and cinnamon, telling him about a patient who finally got good news, about her grandmother's puzzle collection, about nothing that matters and everything that does. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asks him one Sunday, turning her cup slowly on the table. "Besides the shop, I mean." Callan pauses a beat too long before answering. "Sometimes," he says, which is the truest thing he's told her in weeks, even wrapped inside a lie she doesn't know is a lie at all. "I think about it more than I probably should." "What would you do instead?" "I don't know yet," he says. Something that doesn't feel like it belongs to someone else first. Their Sunday coffee becomes Friday dinners. Friday dinners become long drives up the coast with the windows down, gas station snacks on the dashboard, a playlist neither of them will admit they made specifically for the other. One Friday, Nia invites him to dinner at Odessa's small brick house, warning him twice in the car that her grandmother doesn't hold back opinions about anyone, least of all a man. showing up for the first time. Callan brings flowers picked up from a gas station because he doesn't want to walk in looking like he's trying too hard, and Odessa takes one look at the slightly wilted bouquet and laughs so hard she has to sit down. A man who shows up with gas station flowers instead of nothing at all, she tells Nia later, drying dishes while Callan helps clear the table, is a man who at least tries. That's more than I can say for most of them. Callan spends the evening asking Odessa about her puzzles, about the neighborhood she raised Nia in, listening more than he talks. And by the time he leaves, Odessa has already decided something about him that she doesn't say out loud yet, not until months later when it matters more. Somewhere between the third road trip and the fifth, somewhere between a gas station in Delaware and a boardwalk in a town neither of them can spell right, Callan stops thinking of the lie as something small. He starts thinking of it as something he has to fix before it breaks the only real thing he's ever had. He almost tells her one night, parked outside her apartment with the engine off and the radio still playing low. The words sit right behind his teeth. Ready? Nia, there's something you should know about me. He gets as far as her name. Then his phone buzzes on the seat between them, screen lighting up with a name that makes his stomach drop. Gareth, urgent, call now. Nia glances at the screen before he can flip it face down. Gareth again, she says. Same guy who calls during our coffee dates. Boss trouble? Something like that. Callan says again, the same 4 words doing the same heavy lifting they've done for weeks. She studies him a moment longer than usual, like she's deciding whether to ask the question sitting right behind her own teeth. She doesn't ask it. She just reaches over, squeezes his hand once and says goodnight. He watches her walk up the steps to her building, key in the door, one wave over her shoulder before she disappears inside. Then he looks down at the phone still buzzing in his hand, Gareth's name flashing for the 4th time in 10 minutes, and feels the two halves of his life pulling apart like a seam that's been holding for far longer than it should have. Whatever Gareth wants tonight, it isn't small. Gareth never calls 4 times in a row for something small. Callan thinks of the board meeting that morning, the way Gareth's eyes tracked him a little too closely on the way out, the way he lingered by the elevator like a man deciding whether to say something and choosing silence instead. Callan answers on the 5th ring, and the first 4 words out of his cousin's mouth wipe every trace of the coastline and the playlist and the woman walking up those steps clean out of his head. We need to talk. Now. The woman at the farmer's market grabs Callan's wrist before he can walk past her stall, and for one terrible second, Nia thinks a stranger is about to ruin everything. I know you, the woman says, squinting up at him under the morning sun, a crate of tomatoes balanced on her hip. You're the one from the news. She snaps her fingers, chasing the word. Chairman something. Mercer, right? The investment fellow? Around them, the market keeps moving, unaware and indifferent, vendors calling out prices on peaches and cut flowers, a child chasing a dog between 2 stalls, the smell of roasted corn drifting from a cart near the entrance. None of it slows down for the sudden stillness that grips Nia's stomach. Callan's smile doesn't move an inch, but something behind his eyes does, quick and sharp, gone before Nia can name it. Wrong guy, he says, easy, warm, the kind of voice built for exactly this moment. Get that a lot though. Must have one of those faces. The woman studies him another second, shrugs and turns back to her tomatoes already. Forgetting him the way strangers forget strangers every single day. Nia laughs it off too, tucking her arm back through his as they keep walking past stalls of peaches and cut flowers. Chairman Mercer. That's a good one. Bet you get mistaken for him constantly, looking that important. Callan laughs along with her, and if she notices how tight the laugh sounds around the edges, she doesn't say so. Welcome back if you're just joining this story. What Nia doesn't know yet is standing 3 feet away from her at a farmer's market on a Saturday morning, buying peaches like an ordinary man with an ordinary life. If you've ever wondered what it costs to hide who you really are from the person you love most, keep watching because the cost is about to come. Now back to the market. It isn't the first time this has happened. 3 weeks ago in a hardware store on a Saturday afternoon, a clerk had looked up from the register, done a double take and said, "Anything I can help you find today, sir?" With a little too much respect folded into the word sir, the kind reserved for men whose names get printed on donation plaques. Callan had waved him off with a joke about looking for the cheapest paint on the shelf, and the clerk had laughed and let it go, never quite placing where he recognized that face from. 2 months before that, at a restaurant Callan picked specifically because it sat far enough from downtown that nobody should have recognized him, a waiter refilling water glasses had slipped and said, "Right away, Mr. Mercer," before catching himself mid-sentence and covering with a mumbled apology about mixing up tables. Nia had been in the middle of describing a patient's recovery at the time, and never noticed the waiter's slip at all, never noticed the way Callan's knuckles had gone white around his water glass for exactly 3 seconds before relaxing again. A bank balance enters the picture. But somewhere in the last 4 months, the excuse has started to feel less like protection and more like something closer to cowardice, and Callan is not a man who enjoys admitting he's afraid of anything. His apartment doesn't help the lie along, not really. It's small, 2 bedrooms above a bakery that fills the stairwell with the smell of cinnamon every morning, furnished with a couch he bought secondhand and a television that's older than some of his employees. What Nia doesn't know, walking through that apartment on quiet Friday nights, cooking pasta in a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to stand in without touching, is that the building belongs to a holding company that belongs to another holding company that eventually, 3 layers down, belongs to him. He pays rent to himself and calls it modest living. He drives a car with 200,000 miles on it and a check engine light he refuses to fix, because a man who drives something flashier draws exactly the kind of attention he spent years avoiding. He pays for groceries in cash when he's with her, because cash doesn't come with a name printed on it. None of it is dishonest in the way a lie usually is. There's no forged document, no invented story told with a straight face. It's 1,000 small omissions stacked one on top of the other, each one small enough to justify, all of them together heavy enough to bury a man if the pile ever tips over. It almost tips over on a Tuesday afternoon in late spring, under an old oak tree at the edge of a public park where they've had a dozen picnics over the last several months. The grass is warm. A dog barks somewhere past the tree line. Nia is halfway through a sentence about a patient at the clinic when Callan reaches into his jacket pocket and goes quiet in a way that makes her stop talking too. "I need to ask you something," he says, and his voice comes out rougher than he means it to. "And I need you to know before I ask it, that everything I'm about to say is true. Even the parts one haven't told you yet." Nia's eyebrows draw together. "Callan, what's going on?" He gets down on one knee in the grass, and the ring box in his hand catches a sliver of afternoon light. "I'm not who you think I am," he says, and for one full second, Nia's stomach drops the way it drops on the downswing of a roller coaster, certain the next words out of his mouth are going to break something between them. "I mean, I am who you think I am. Everything that matters is true. But there's a version of my life I haven't shown you yet, and I need you to know it exists before I ask you to spend the rest of yours with me. Callan." Her voice comes out smaller than she means it to. "You're scaring me a little." "I'm not a car mechanic," he says. "I never was. I run a company. A big one. Bigger than either of us has ever talked about, because every time I got close to telling you, I got scared you'd start looking at me the way everyone else eventually does." Nia stares at him, kneeling in the grass, ring box trembling slightly in his hand, and for a long moment, neither of them breathes. "How big," she finally asks, "is bigger than either of us has talked about?" He tells her. Not every number, not every detail, but enough. Enough for her to understand that the man who fixed a broken phone charger for a stranger with rain-soaked shoes controls a company employing thousands of people across a dozen states. Enough for her to sit back on the picnic blanket, hand pressed flat against her chest, trying to fit this new information into a shape that makes sense. "Why?" she asks quietly. "Didn't you just tell me?" "Because the second people find out," Callan says, "they stop seeing me. They start seeing a number instead. And I have spent years watching that happen to every relationship I've ever had, and I could not survive watching it happen to this one too." Nia is quiet for a long time, long enough for the dog barking past the tree line to stop, long enough for a breeze to move through the leaves above them and settle again. When she finally speaks, her voice comes out steady in a way that surprises them both. "I fell in love with a man who calls 3 mechanics on his lunch break for a stranger," she says. "A man who remembers my grandmother's puzzle pieces are shaped like clouds. That man is still kneeling in front of me right now. The bank account doesn't change who you were on every single Tuesday for the last 6 months." Relief moves through Callan's whole body, visible enough that Nia almost laughs despite everything. "So is that a yes?" he asks. "Ask me properly," she says, "and find out." He asks her properly. She says yes before he finishes the question. You were so afraid of me finding out, she says, that you spent almost a year building an entire second life just to protect the first one I never even knew was hiding underneath it. I know how that sounds. It sounds, she says, like a man who's been alone a lot longer than he's let on. It squeezes his hand. I'm not going anywhere, Callan. Money doesn't scare me off. I've never had enough of it to be scared of it in the first place. That night, she calls Odessa before she's even made it back to her apartment, sitting in her parked car with the engine off, phone pressed to her ear, still turning the ring around her finger like she isn't quite sure it's real. He's not a mechanic, Grandma, she says, and then laughs at how strange the sentence sounds out loud. He owns the company. The whole thing. Mercer Holdings, the one with the building downtown. There's a long pause on the other end of the line, long enough that Nia checks to see if the call dropped. Well, Odessa finally says, I did tell you gas station flowers meant something. What neither of them notices, wrapped up in a moment neither one will ever forget, is a car. Parked at the far edge of the lot, engine idling, a man behind the wheel watching them. Through a pair of binoculars he doesn't bother to hide particularly well. Gareth Mercer has been having his cousin followed for 3 weeks. Tonight, watching Callan slide a ring onto the hand of a woman with no family name worth mentioning and no fortune to speak of, he finally has exactly what he's been waiting for. He lowers the binoculars, picks up his phone, and starts making calls before the two of them have even left the park. The florist's hands shake as she deletes the order from her system, and she hates herself a little for how easy it turns out to be. You're sure about this, she says into the phone, glancing at the screen where Nia Rowan's wedding order sits fully paid, confirmed, scheduled for delivery in 9 days. Roses, peonies, the pale ivory arrangements Nia had picked out herself on a Tuesday afternoon, describing exactly how she wanted the courtyard to look. This woman has a contract. Deposits. This isn't something I can just. $50,000, Gareth Mercer says on the other end of the line, voice smooth as marble and twice as cold. Wired to your account the moment the cancellation clears your system. You'll tell her something fell through. Weather delay. Supply issue. Doesn't matter what you say as long as her flowers don't arrive. The florist stares at the cancellation button for 4 long seconds, thinking about the mortgage payment 3 weeks overdue, the daughter starting college in the fall, the math. That makes $50,000 impossible to say no to no matter how it makes her feel. Then she clicks it. 9 days before the wedding, Gareth Mercer sits behind the desk of a downtown office. 2 floors below the boardroom where his cousin humiliated him weeks earlier, a legal pad. In front of him covered in names, arrows, dollar figures. He isn't sabotaging a wedding. Not in his own mind. He's protecting a legacy his uncle built from a single office and nothing else, a legacy his cousin is about to hand to a stranger with no name, no fortune, and no idea what she's marrying into. If Callan wants to throw away everything his own father built, Gareth has decided he isn't going to do it quietly. The florist is the first call. The bridal boutique is the second. She'll come in for a final fitting, Gareth tells the boutique owner, a man who owes him a favor 3 years overdue and has been waiting nervously for Gareth to collect on it. When she does, her shoes go missing. Not damaged. Missing. Gone. No explanation, no replacement pair on hand, nothing your staff can produce in time. And if she asks questions? She won't get the chance, Gareth says. The wedding's in 9 days. She won't have time to chase down answers. She'll have time to panic, which is exactly what I want. The transportation company is the third call, a limo service Nia booked months ago for the ride to the estate. Gareth doesn't even need to pay this one off directly. A well-placed rumor about a double booking, a canceled contract buried in fine print nobody bothered reading closely, and the reservation simply disappears from the system 2 days before the wedding, leaving Nia with nothing but a confirmation email that no longer means anything. He works through the list with the patience of a man who has waited his entire life to matter. As much as his cousin, checking off each name like items on a grocery list. The caterer is fourth. Gareth doesn't even need to threaten this one, just reminds him of an unpaid invoice from a Mercer Holdings event 8 months back. One Gareth has been sitting on quietly, waiting for a use. Supply issue 2 days before the wedding, Gareth tells him. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to force a scramble. The caterer agrees before Gareth finishes the sentence, relief and shame fighting for space on his face. The photographer's assistant comes fifth, though not the photographer himself. That one's too well connected to risk exposing Gareth's involvement. The assistant is easier, a young man 3 months behind on rent who takes the envelope of cash without asking many questions about what exactly he's supposed to do with the backup memory cards once the ceremony starts. A junior wedding planner named Julian Carter takes the 6th call, and he's the only one who pushes back, at least at first. "This is someone's wedding," he says, voice tight. "This isn't a business deal, Mr. Mercer. This is a person's life." "It's a business deal to me," Gareth says. "And you work for a company I sit on the board of. I think carefully about which side of that arrangement you want to be standing on when this is over." Julian doesn't answer right away. When he finally agrees to misplace the seating arrangements at the last possible moment, his voice has lost whatever fight it had left in it. None of it is anything Gareth would call cruel, not out loud, not even in his own head. He tells himself this is business. Protection. The kind of hard decision his father always said separated men who inherit companies from men who actually deserve to run them. What he doesn't plan for, sitting in his office running through a checklist built to humiliate a woman he has never once spoken to, is his own assistant standing frozen in the doorway, having heard the last 3 calls without meaning to. Her name is Trina Boyd, 26 years old, 2 years into a job she took because Mercer Holdings paid better than anywhere else in the city, willing to hire someone straight out of business school. She has typed Gareth's emails, scheduled his meetings, smiled through his moods for 2 years, and never once heard him talk like this. She stands frozen for 3 full seconds, coffee cup halfway raised to her mouth, listening to a man arrange for a stranger's flowers to disappear like it's a line item on a spreadsheet. Her first instinct is to back away quietly, pretend she never walked down this hallway at all. Her second instinct, the one that wins, is to knock on the open door hard enough that Gareth has to look up. "Mr. Mercer," she says carefully, "did you need me to draft anything for the board meeting?" Gareth looks up, and for a half second something flickers across his face, calculating whether she heard enough to matter. "Close the door," he says. She closes it. Whatever she heard stays behind that door for now, filed away next to every other uncomfortable thing she's learned to keep quiet about in this job. But something in her expression, the way her hand lingers on the doorknob a second too long, suggests this particular silence might not last. Walking back to her desk, she pulls up an old email chain with Callan's assistant, one she hasn't touched in months, and stares at it for a long time before closing the laptop without sending anything at all. 6 days before the wedding, Nia stands in the bridal boutique fitting room, staring at an empty shelf where her shoes are supposed to be. The rest of the shop hums along around her, a bell over the door chiming for another customer, a seamstress pinning a hem too. Racks away, all of it painfully ordinary, while her own mourning quietly falls apart. "I don't understand," she says, voice climbing toward panic despite every effort to keep it level. "I picked them up 3 weeks ago. I paid in full. I have the receipt right here." She digs through her bag, pulls out the crumpled paper, holds it up like evidence in a trial nobody else seems interested in hearing. The boutique owner won't meet her eyes. "There's been some kind of mix-up in our storage system. I promise you we're looking into it. We'll have something for you before the big day. The wedding is in 6 days." "I understand that, ma'am. We're doing everything we can." Nia leaves the boutique with her receipt clutched in one hand and a sick, sinking feeling she can't quite name settling into her stomach. It's just shoes, she tells herself, standing on the sidewalk outside, traffic moving past like nothing in the world has shifted at all. Shoes can be replaced. Shoes are the smallest problem a wedding could possibly hand her. She has no way of knowing yet that the missing shoes are only the first domino, that somewhere across town a florist is drafting a cancellation email, that a limo reservation confirmed months ago no longer exists in any system, and that a man she has never met has spent the last 9 days making absolutely certain her wedding day collapses in front of everyone she loves. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. A text from the caterer, apologizing, citing a supply issue, promising to make it right somehow before the ceremony. Nia reads it twice, feeling the sick feeling in her stomach turn into something closer to dread. 2 days later, a call from the transportation company confirms what she'd already started to fear. I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have any record of a reservation under that name. The voice on the phone says, polite and useless in equal measure. Perhaps you booked with a different company? She didn't. She has the confirmation email saved, printed, sitting in a folder with every other wedding document she's collected over the last 6 months. None of it matters to a system that no longer recognizes her name. That evening, Julian Carter calls to apologize for what he describes only as a scheduling error with the seating chart, his voice thin and apologetic in a way that makes Nia wonder, for the first time, whether any of this is actually an accident at all. One mistake is bad luck. 2 mistakes is a coincidence stretched thin. And this, whatever this is building into, has already stopped feeling like either one. She calls Callan that night, sitting on the edge of her bed with the lights off, phone pressed to her ear. It's probably nothing, she says, even though her voice doesn't sound like she believes it. Vendors mess up sometimes. It's a busy season. Tell me exactly what's happened, Callan says, and something in his tone has already shifted, sharper than she's used to hearing from him, a version of his voice she recognizes, now as the one that runs boardrooms. She lists it all out. The shoes, the florist, the limo reservation that vanished, the caterers, vague apology. By the time she finishes, there's a long silence on his end of the line, long enough that she checks to see if the call dropped. I'll handle it, he finally says. Don't worry about any of it. I promise you I'll handle it. But he doesn't tell her who he suspects. Doesn't say his cousin's name out loud, not yet, because saying it out loud means admitting how far Gareth might already be willing to go. And some part of Callan isn't ready to know the answer to that question 6 days before his own wedding. What do you think happens when every safety net gets pulled out from under someone 6 days before the biggest day of her life? Drop your guess in the comments before you find out, because what Nia doesn't know yet is that the missing shoes are the least of what's coming for her. The limo never comes. Nia stands on the curb outside Odessa's brick house at 7 in the morning, wedding dress zipped into a garment bag over her shoulder, checking her phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. No missed call. No text. Just a confirmation email from months ago that means nothing now. The same way the florist's contract meant nothing, the same way the boutique's promise about her shoes meant nothing. The street around her is waking up slow, the way it always does on a Saturday, a neighbor 2 doors down watering plants in a bathrobe, a delivery truck idling somewhere out of sight, the smell of someone's breakfast bacon drifting through an open window. None of it matches the size of what's supposed to happen in 3 hours. They're not coming, she says out loud, mostly to herself, mostly because saying it makes it real enough to start solving. Behind her, the front door creaks open, and Odessa steps out onto the porch in her robe, coffee mug in one hand, watching her granddaughter pace the sidewalk like a woman trying to walk her way out of a bad dream. Call Callan, Odessa says. I don't want him fixing everything. I want one day, Grandma. One day where I get married and none of it feels like a rescue mission. Odessa doesn't argue with that. She understands it better than most people would, having spent 40 years teaching her granddaughter exactly that kind of stubborn independence, and some regret mixes in now with the pride as she watches it play out on her own front lawn. She just sips her coffee and watches the street, the same street she's watched for 40 years, until her eyes land on something that makes her set the mug down on the porch railing. Well, she says, there's your ride. Welcome back if you're just tuning in. Everything Nia has been through up to this point has been leading toward one single morning, and that morning has finally arrived. You ever watched someone try to hold their dignity together with nothing but stubbornness and a little ribbon? Stay close, because this is where it gets tested hardest. Now back to the porch. Rolling down the street at a pace that suggests no urgency whatsoever is a battered yellow tricycle, balloons already tied to the handlebars, a hand-lettered sign propped against the windshield. Behind the wheel sits Odessa's next-door neighbor, a retired mechanic named Desmond Fields, who has fixed half the cars on this block for the price of a home-cooked meal. Heard your ride fell through, he calls out the open window, grinning like a man who's been waiting his whole life for an excuse to matter. This ain't much, but it runs and it's free and it'll get you there before that ceremony starts without you. Nia stares at the tricycle for a long moment. Then, despite everything, she starts to laugh, the first real laugh she's had in 6 days. You're serious? Dead serious. Balloons are extra, but I'm throwing those in for free too. Desmond hops out to help load the dress bag across the back seat, tucking it in careful as a manhandling. Something breakable. My wife made that sign this morning soon as I told her what happened. Said no bride of hers was walking into her own wedding without somebody in her corner. I'm not technically her bride, Nia says, laughing again despite the tightness still sitting in her chest. Close enough, Desmond says. Neighborhood smaller than people think. 20 minutes later, dress bag secured across the back seat, Nia sits beside Odessa in the tricycle's narrow cab, wind pulling at loose strands of her hair as Desmond navigates toward the estate at a speed generous enough to call cautious. It isn't the arrival she pictured a year ago, dreaming about this day in the quiet moments between shifts at the clinic. It's better, in a way she doesn't have words for yet, because every piece of it is real, chosen out of necessity instead of luxury, and there's a strange peace in that. She thinks about the woman in the mirror this morning, dressed, zipped, makeup done, waiting for a car that never came, and how close she came to letting panic decide how this day would go. She thinks about every other morning that tested her the same way, every version of this feeling she's already survived, and lets that thought settle somewhere steady in her chest. The peace doesn't last. Halfway to the estate, Nia reaches down to adjust the emergency pair of sandals she bought 2 nights ago after giving up on the boutique ever finding her real shoes, a cheap pair from a drugstore near her apartment, the only thing available on such short notice. She feels the strap shift wrong under her fingers, thinner than it looked in the store, already beginning to separate from the sole. "Grandma," she says, voice tightening, "I think these are already breaking." Odessa reaches into her purse without a word and pulls out a spool of white ribbon, the same kind she's kept tucked away since Nia was a little girl who tore the hem of every dress she owned. "Then we fix it the way we fix everything," Odessa says, threading the ribbon through the broken strap with hands that shake but don't stop moving. "Quiet, quick, and you keep walking no matter what anybody says about it." Nia watches her grandmother's fingers work, remembering 100 Sunday afternoons at that same kitchen table, remembering the lesson that came with every stitch. Money can buy attention. Character earns respect. "You think people are going to notice?" Nia asks, "before I even make it to the aisle?" Odessa ties off the ribbon with a final practiced knot and looks up at her granddaughter, eyes steady in a way that's carried Nia through harder days than this one. "People notice whatever they've already decided to look for," she says. "Some of them are going to look for a reason to laugh no matter what shoes you're wearing. That's never been about you, baby. It's about what's missing in them." Nia lets that settle, breathing through the tightness still sitting behind her ribs, and doesn't answer. Some lessons don't need an answer, just enough time to sink all the way in before they're needed. She doesn't know yet how many people are about to test that lesson in the next hour. Miles away, in a downtown office 2 floors below the boardroom where he humiliated his cousin weeks earlier, Gareth Mercer straightens his tie in a mirror, satisfied with the morning's worth of confirmed disasters. The florist canceled. The shoes never turned up. The transportation vanished from every system that mattered. All that remains is watching. The woman arrived looking exactly as small as he intended her to look, in front of every relative and business partner he personally invited for that exact purpose. He checks his phone one last time, a final list of names confirmed for the guest list, relatives who owe him favors, business partners who've learned to laugh at whatever he laughs at first. Every seat in that courtyard has been filled with someone he can count on to make Nia feel exactly as unwelcome as he needs her to feel. What Gareth doesn't know, checking his reflection one final time before heading to the car waiting downstairs, is that his cousin spent the last 6 days making calls of his own. Callan stands in the modest apartment above the bakery for the last time as an unmarried man, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and precise. "I want the full executive team on the property by 11, he tells the head of his security division. "Quietly, no announcement, until I give the signal. And get Marlon Whitfield there personally. I want him standing where everyone can see him." "Understood, sir. And the other matter? The one involving your cousin?" Callan's jaw tightens the same way it tightened in that boardroom weeks ago. "Document everything," he says. "Every call, every vendor, every dollar that moved. I want proof, not suspicion, by the time this wedding starts." "We've already got most of it," the man on the other end confirms. "It's not going to be pleasant reading, sir." "It's not supposed to be," Callan says. He hangs up and stands alone for a moment in the small kitchen where he's made Nia pasta a dozen times over the past year, looking around at a life he built specifically because it felt untouched by everything waiting for him downtown. In a few hours, that life and the one he inherited are going to collide in front of 200 strangers, and there's no version of today where he can keep them separate any longer. He checks his watch one last time before heading downstairs to a car that will carry him toward a wedding neither he nor his cousin is walking into with the same expectations. Outside, the bakery below his apartment is already filling with the morning rush, the smell of fresh bread drifting up through the floorboards one final time. He pauses at the door, looking back at the small living room where he spent more honest hours than any boardroom has ever given him, and feels something settle in his chest that's part grief and part relief. A chapter closing so a bigger one can finally open. By the time the yellow tricycle turns through the estate's iron gates, engine sputtering, balloons bouncing against the frame, everything Gareth arranged and everything Callan quietly countered has already been set into motion. Neither cousin knows exactly how the other's plan will play out. Neither one is entirely certain, standing on opposite sides of a courtyard about to fill with 200 guests, whether the day ends in the humiliation one of them wants or the reckoning the other one has spent 6 sleepless nights preparing. Nia smooths the front of her dress with both hands, feeling the ribbon at her ankle hold steady for now, watching the estate's white columns rise into view past the hedges the way they've risen in her imagination every night for the last 6 months. Beside her, Odessa reaches over and squeezes her hand once, the same steady grip that's carried Nia through every hard morning of her life. Whatever happens past those gates, Odessa says quietly, you walk in like you belong there. Because you do. Nia nods, throat tight, unable to trust her own voice with an answer. She looks down at her lap, at the ribbon peeking out from beneath the hem of her dress, and thinks about every stitch her grandmother has ever sewn into something broken, every one of them holding just long enough to matter. She thinks, too, about every double shift and skipped meal that built her into someone who could survive a morning like this one without breaking, and lets that thought carry her the rest of the way up the drive. The gates swing wide. The tricycle rolls through, tires bumping over the cobblestone drive, balloons swaying overhead in the morning breeze. And somewhere past the hedges, a crowd already gathering near the fountain turns to look at exactly the wrong moment. Phones already rising before Nia's feet even touch the ground. The wealthy woman in the wide-brimmed hat isn't the only one who came prepared to enjoy this. The courtyard smells like roses and cut grass, the sun sitting high enough now to warm the stone underfoot, and somewhere beneath the string quartet's music, the low hum of 200 private conversations carries an edge sharper than any wedding should hold. Waiters move between rows with trays of champagne, and more than a few guests have already had 2 glasses before the ceremony even started, loosening tongues that were never particularly careful to begin with. 3 rows back, near a table stacked with wrapped gifts nobody will remember by tomorrow, a cluster of Mercer family relatives leans in close, voices dropping to the kind of whisper designed to be overheard. Gareth said she grew up on public assistance. One of them murmurs. Said the family practically had to pay her off just to sign a prenup. None of it is true. All of it spreads through the crowd faster than the string quartet can finish a single song, passed from row to row like something worth trading, each retelling picking up new details nobody bothered to check. Near the back row, 2 business partners Gareth invited specifically for this moment trade. A look over their champagne glasses, one of them already composing a text to a colleague who couldn't make it, describing the bride's arrival in language that will make its way around 3 different social circles by dinner time. A photographer hired for the reception, not the ceremony, quietly angles his camera toward the tricycle anyway, sensing an image more interesting than anything on his shot list. Even the children seem to have caught the mood from the adults around them, whispering to each other behind cupped hands, watching Nia's approach with the wide, unfiltered curiosity that hasn't yet learned to hide itself. Near the aisle, an older woman draped in more jewelry than the entire bridal party combined catches Nia's eye as she passes and reaches out, pressing something cold into her palm before Nia can pull away. A folded $100 bill. For a real pair of shoes, sweetheart, the woman says loud enough for the row behind her to hear and laugh. No judgment. We've all had lean years. Nia's fingers close around the bill, not from gratitude, from the sheer effort it takes not to hand it back with a few sentences the woman wouldn't enjoy hearing. She keeps walking. Instead, because stopping now, arguing now, would hand this entire crowd exactly the show they came for. She tucks the bill into her palm and holds it there, a small, humiliating weight. She'll deal with later, once there's room to feel anything about it at all. At the far end of the aisle, Callan watches her walk toward him and feels something close to fury building behind his calm expression, controlled only by the promise he made himself weeks ago not to give Gareth the reaction he's clearly hoping for. He's watched Nia hold her chin level through harder things than a courtyard full of strangers, watched her carry grief and exhaustion and years of quiet sacrifice without ever once asking anyone to notice. Watching her do it now, in front of people who claim his last name and share none of his character, is the hardest thing he's had to sit through in longer than he can remember. Nia keeps her eyes fixed on him the rest of the way, using his steady expression like a rope, pulled taut across a gap she has to cross alone. Somewhere behind that steadiness she can tell something in him is tightening too, and it steadies her more than she expects, knowing she isn't the only one holding this moment together by force of will. Near the fountain, one of the security men shifts his weight, checking his watch, waiting for a signal that hasn't come yet. Gareth watches all of it unfold from a shaded spot near the hedges, a glass of champagne untouched in his hand, expression carefully arranged into something like sympathy for a spectacle he built brick by brick over 9 days. Everything is going according to plan. The shoes are broken. The transportation failed. The guests are laughing exactly as loud as he hoped they would. He allows himself a small, private smile, the first genuine one he's felt in weeks, the satisfaction of watching a plan finally pay off after months of feeling overlooked. In every room that mattered. He thinks briefly of his uncle's decision years back to leave the company to Callan, outright rather than split any part of it his way, a decision he spent 5 years quietly resenting without ever finding the nerve to challenge it directly. This, he tells himself, is as close to justice as he's likely to get, watching his cousin's chosen bride crumble in front of the very people whose respect Gareth has spent his whole life chasing. A voice beside him breaks his focus. Should we postpone? It's the wedding officiant, an older man who's clearly uncomfortable with the mood building across the courtyard, wringing his hands around a small leather book he hasn't opened yet. This doesn't feel right. Maybe we give her a moment to compose herself before. She'll be fine, Gareth says smoothly, not bothering to look at him. Brides get nervous. What? The ceremony continue. With respect, Mr. Mercer, this doesn't look like nerves. This looks like... Let the ceremony continue, Gareth repeats, sharper this time, and the officiant swallows whatever he was about to say next, nodding once before retreating toward the platform, his small leather book still unopened, his unease trailing behind him like something he can't quite shake. Gareth wants nothing more than for it to continue. He wants the whole thing captured, uploaded, replayed for months, a permanent record of exactly how far beneath the Mercer name this woman truly stands, proof he can point to the next time anyone questions why. He, not his younger cousin, should have inherited the company his uncle built. What he doesn't notice, distracted by his own satisfaction, is the black cars rolling to a stop near the back gate, or the man in dark sunglasses stepping forward to murmur 4 words to the security team flanking him. Get ready. He's here. Nia reaches the platform, chin level, 1 foot in front of the other despite the ribbon dangling loose against the stone. For 1 long second, standing in front of Callan with the whole courtyard holding its breath around her, none of the whispers or the folded $100 bill or the child's innocent question about her broken shoes matters at all. There's just his face, steady and certain, looking at her the way he's looked at her every single Sunday for the past year, like she's the only person worth seeing in any room he walks into. The string quartet finally falls silent, the last note hanging in the air a beat too long. Somewhere behind her, a phone camera's soft chime confirms another recording has started. The smell of white roses and cut grass fills the space between them, and for a moment, Nia lets herself forget every eye watching, focusing only on his. He reaches out his hand. Then, instead of taking hers the way every guest expects, he lowers himself, slow and deliberate, until one knee touches the ground in front of 200 people who came here to watch her fail. The courtyard goes silent in a way it hasn't been silent all morning. Even the whispering Relatives near the gift table stop mid-sentence. Even Gareth, still standing near the hedges, with his glass of champagne, feels the first flicker of something he doesn't want to name. Callan carefully unties the ribbon holding Nia's broken sandal together, fingers steady, despite the audience, and presses his lips to the top of her foot like it's the most natural gesture in the world. Gasps ripple through the crowd, sharp and immediate. The phone drops somewhere near the back row, forgotten in someone's hand. The woman in the wide-brimmed hat, still holding her champagne glass halfway to her lips, freezes mid-sip. The photographer hired for the reception lowers his camera slightly, no longer certain what kind of image he's supposed to be capturing. A child near the front tugs at her mother's sleeve again, this time asking why the man is kissing the lady's foot, and this time nobody laughs at the question at all. He rises slowly, still holding her gaze, and turns to face the guests scattered across the courtyard, every laughing mouth from 10 minutes ago now hanging open in confusion. He takes his time before speaking, letting the silence stretch until it feels heavier than anything he could say into it. "I've negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions," he says, voice carrying clean across the stone, without needing to raise it. "I've met presidents. I've spoken before the most powerful people on earth." He pauses. The silence stretches thin enough to hear the fountain running behind him, water trickling over stone in a rhythm that feels almost too calm for the moment building around it. "But I have never met anyone richer in character than this woman." A guest near the back row leans toward her husband, squinting at the black cars now, parked in a tidy row past the hedges. "Those are Mercer Holdings vehicles," she whispers. "I've seen them outside the downtown office 100 times. Her husband frowns, glancing between the cars and the groom still standing at the platform, some private math starting to add up behind his eyes that he isn't ready to say out loud yet. Confused expressions spread through the crowd like a current running the wrong direction. The wealthy woman who handed Nia a folded $100 bill glances down at her own empty hand, as though trying to remember why she thought that gesture would land the way she intended. Near the gift table, one of the whispering relatives turns to another with a question forming on her lips that she doesn't quite know how to finish. That is exactly when the doors behind the fountain swing open, and 3 black cars empty their passengers onto the courtyard stone in a line so precise it looks rehearsed. The murmur that started as confusion shifts into something closer to alarm. Guess who? Were laughing minutes ago now crane their necks toward the courtyard entrance, champagne glasses forgotten in their hands, trying to piece together what kind of wedding requires this kind of arrival. Near the hedges, Gareth's confident posture falters for the first time all morning, one hand tightening slowly around the stem of his glass as recognition dawns across his face in pieces, each one landing harder than the last. Security teams step out first, 6 men in dark suits fanning across the courtyard entrance, with the kind of practiced calm that comes from doing this exact walk hundreds of times before. Executives follow behind them, a dozen sharply dressed men and women whose faces several guests recognize from financial news broadcasts they usually mute during dinner. Finally, walking at the center of the group like the point of an arrow, comes a silver-haired man the whole crowd seems to know without needing an introduction. Whispers ripple backward through the rows of seated guests, name after name surfacing as recognition spreads. Someone near the front mouths the words board of directors to the person beside her, disbelief written across her face. A man in the third row who has spent the last 20 minutes laughing at Nia's broken sandals now sits frozen, champagne glass halfway to his lips, staring at faces he's only ever seen photographed beside stock market headlines. He approaches Callan directly, ignoring the stunned guests parting around him like water around a stone. "Good afternoon, Chairman Mercer." The words land across the courtyard like a physical weight. Somewhere near the hedges, the color drains from Gareth's face so fast it looks almost painful, his untouched champagne glass tilting dangerously in his hand before he catches himself. He glances left, then right, searching the faces around him for someone who might explain what he's watching, but every expression mirrors his own confusion. Nobody in this courtyard prepared for the ground shifting this fast beneath their feet. Marlon Whitfield, the company's longest-serving board member and the same man who Studied Callan through dark sunglasses earlier that morning, reaches into his jacket and produces a leather portfolio, holding it out with both hands like something ceremonial. Behind him, the other executives fan out along the courtyard's edge, forming a quiet perimeter that makes it clear this moment is meant to be witnessed, not rushed. As requested, Marlon says. Callan takes it, opens it slowly enough for every phone in the courtyard to capture the moment, and turns the first page toward Nia so she can read it herself instead of hearing it. Secondhand documents. Legal, notarized, signed weeks ago and held in reserve for exactly this morning. Ownership papers transferring one of the company's newest charitable foundations. Fully funded, fully staffed, entirely hers. Nia's hands shake as she takes the portfolio, flipping past the first page to the second, then the third, numbers and clauses swimming in front of her eyes faster than she can fully absorb them. Board seats. An operating budget larger than the entire clinic's annual funding. A staff already hired and waiting for her direction. I started building this the week you told me about the veteran you helped find a motel room, Callan says, quiet enough now that it feels like he's speaking only to her even though every guest in the courtyard leans forward to catch it. I wanted to give you the resources to do on a larger scale what you've been doing quietly your entire life. Nia stares at the pages, hands trembling, reading a name at the top of the letterhead that stops her breath entirely. The Odessa Rowan Foundation. You named it after her, she says, voice breaking on the last word. She taught you everything that makes you who you are, Callan says. It seemed wrong to name it after anyone else. Behind Nia, Odessa presses a hand to her chest, tears already gathering in eyes that haven't cried in front of a crowd since her granddaughter's own christening decades ago. Doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. The look on her face says everything the courtyard needs to understand about the woman they spent the morning laughing at. Gasps echo across the courtyard again, softer this time, edged with something closer to shame than shock. The woman mocked for wearing torn sandals 10 minutes earlier has just become one of the nation's most influential philanthropists in front of the very people who laughed at her. But the biggest twist of the morning isn't the money, and it isn't the foundation. Marlon Whitfield steps forward again, addressing the crowd directly now instead of just Callan, his voice carrying the flat, unhurried authority of a man who has delivered difficult news in boardrooms for 30 years and long ago stopped worrying about whether it made him popular. Every guest who entered this property today signed an intake agreement at the gate. He says, standard security protocol for an estate of this size, given the nature of who owns it. What most of you didn't read closely was the clause granting consent for recorded footage on the premises. A ripple of unease moves through the crowd, guests glancing at each other, at the security cameras mounted discreetly along the courtyard stone columns, at the phones still clutched in their own hands. Somewhere in the third row, a man mutters under his breath, doing rapid math on exactly which of his comments this morning might have been caught on tape. Every comment made about the bride this morning has been recorded, Marlon continues. Every laugh. Every phone raised to film her humiliation instead of witness her wedding. Somewhere near the gift table, the wealthy woman who offered Nia a folded $100 bill goes very still, her jewelry suddenly feeling less like decoration and more like evidence. Beside her, one of the business partners Gareth invited quietly slips his phone into his jacket pocket as though putting it away now might undo whatever it already captured. Callan turns from Marlon to address the crowd himself, the same voice that just spoke about character now carrying an edge none of them have heard from him before. For the last 9 days, someone in this family has worked very hard to make sure this wedding fell apart, he says. Cancelled florist, missing shoes, a transportation reservation, erased from every system it should have existed in. Vendors pressured, threatened, and paid to sabotage a woman who has never once asked anyone in this courtyard for a single thing. His eyes find Gareth across the crowd, and the courtyard's collective attention swings with them, 200 heads turning at once toward the man standing frozen near the hedges. We have every call, every wire transfer, every vendor willing to testify to exactly who paid them and why. Gareth's mouth opens, some defense forming behind his teeth. Callan, this is, you don't understand what you're accusing me of in front of. I understand exactly what I'm accusing you of, Callan cuts in, voice flat and final. I understand it because we have the recordings to prove it. Nothing comes out after that. The champagne glass finally slips from Gareth's fingers, shattering against the stone, the sound sharp enough to make several guests flinch. Woman near the front covers her mouth. Somewhere in the back, someone's phone camera zooms in tighter, capturing every second of it. If your respect for this woman changed the moment you learned my net worth, Callan says, turning back to the crowd at large, voice steady despite the fury sitting just beneath it, then you never respected either of us at all. He nods once toward the security team still standing near the courtyard entrance. Escort them out. Every guest who mocked her. Every relative who spread a rumor before. Checking if it was true. Starting with my cousin. Nia looks up from the portfolio, past Callan, out toward the 200 faces staring back at her, some ashamed, some still too stunned to process what they've just watched. It finds her voice before she fully decides to use it. I didn't come here for an apology, she says, loud enough to carry across the courtyard the way the whispers carried earlier. I came here to marry a man I love. But since we're all being honest this morning, I'll say this. Not one of you asked me a single question about who I am before you decided what I was worth. My shoes broke. That's all that happened. Everything else, every laugh, every whisper, every dollar someone pressed into my hand, like charity that came from you. Nobody in the courtyard answers. Nobody has anything left to say. Near the third row, the woman who called out about the bride's shoes not affording new ones earlier that morning stares down at her own hands, unable to meet Nia's eyes now that the joke has stopped being funny to anyone but her. The mother whose daughter asked about the broken shoes pulls the child a little closer, murmuring something that sounds like an apology meant less for Nia and more for herself. Two security officers move toward Gareth before he can finish forming a single word in his own defense, and the courtyard that laughed at a torn sandal 20 minutes ago now watches in absolute silence as the man responsible for that laughter gets walked off the property he spent his whole life believing he'd someday inherit. Two security officers move toward Gareth before he can finish forming a single word in his own defense, and the courtyard that laughed at a torn sandal 20 minutes ago now watches in absolute silence as the man responsible for that laughter gets walked off the property he spent his whole life believing he'd someday inherit. This isn't over, Gareth manages, voice cracking under the weight of 200, watching him get escorted away. You'll regret this, Callan. All of you will. Callan doesn't answer him. He simply turns back to Nia, offering his hand again this time, in front of a crowd that finally understands exactly what they're witnessing. Nia stands frozen at the center of it all, portfolio still in her hands, watching 200. Stunned faces rearrange themselves in real time, some ashamed, some furious, all of them finally understanding exactly whose wedding they walked into. Odessa moves to her side, wrapping an arm around her granddaughter's waist, and for a moment the two of them stand together the way they've stood together through every hard morning that came before this one. The officiant, still holding his unopened book, clears his throat and glances toward Callan, uncertain whether a wedding can even continue after a morning like this one. We're getting married today, Callan says simply, answering the question before it's fully. Everything else can wait. The string quartet, unsure whether to resume, exchanges glances before slowly lifting their instruments again, filling the courtyard with music that finally sounds like it belongs at a wedding instead of a spectacle. Guests who spent the morning laughing now sit in careful, uncomfortable silence, some rising quietly to leave, most too stunned to do anything but stay and watch a ceremony they no longer feel entitled to enjoy. She has no idea, holding the papers that just named a charitable foundation after her grandmother, that Gareth's removal from this courtyard is only the first step of a war that hasn't ended, one that's about to follow all three of them straight into a boardroom where far worse secrets than a sabotaged wedding are waiting to come out. If you were standing in that courtyard right now, watching the man who tried to destroy this wedding get walked out in handcuffs of his own making, would you have called it karma, or would you have wanted to see him pay for more than just today? Tell me in the comments, because Gareth Mercer is not finished yet, and neither is this story. The subpoena arrives on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who doesn't blink twice, at the size of the house he's walking up to. Gareth Mercer signs for it standing barefoot in his kitchen, coffee going cold on the counter. Behind him, morning light cutting long shadows across marble countertops that used to feel like proof of everything he'd earned. By the time he finishes reading the first paragraph, his hand has started shaking hard enough that the second page slips from his fingers and lands face down on the tile. Securities fraud. Wire fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. He reads the words again, certain they belong to someone else's life, some story he heard about secondhand rather than one addressed directly to him in bold federal letterhead. The kitchen around him feels suddenly too large, too quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in a house he bought specifically because it made him feel like he'd finally arrived somewhere his father's shadow couldn't reach. 3 weeks since the wedding, and the words on that page mean his cousin didn't stop digging once security walked him off that courtyard. Callan kept digging, and what he found runs deeper than a sabotaged florist order. Welcome back if you're just joining. Everything that happened at that wedding was only the surface of what one man was willing to do to take something that was never his. Stay through to the end, because the truth about to come out in a courtroom is bigger than a broken pair of shoes ever hinted at. Now back to the kitchen. Gareth picks the page back up off the floor, hands still trembling, and reads the second paragraph 3 times before it fully lands. Somebody has been talking. Somebody with access to records that should have stayed buried in a filing cabinet nobody was supposed to open again. He sets the coffee mug in the sink, untouched, and sits down at the kitchen table alone, running through every conversation of the last month, trying to place exactly where the crack in his careful arrangement first appeared. He knows exactly who. 3 weeks earlier, in a downtown office 2 floors below the boardroom where Gareth once humiliated his cousin, Trina Boyd sits across from a company attorney with her hands folded in her lap, voice steady despite the fear sitting behind her ribs. The office is quiet except for the hum of a laptop and the occasional creak of the attorney's chair as he shifts, watching her carefully, giving her every chance to change her mind before he opens the folder in front of him. I want to be clear, the attorney says, sliding a folder across the desk. Once you sign this statement, there's no taking it back. Mr. Mercer will know it came from you eventually. Are you prepared for what that means? Trina thinks about the closed office door, about the call she overheard arranging a stranger's humiliation like a line item on a budget. She thinks about 2 years of typing emails and scheduling meetings for a man who never once asked how her weekend went, and about the woman standing in that courtyard with a ribbon tied around her broken shoe, holding her chin level while 200 strangers laughed. She thinks too about her own mother, who worked 2 jobs for years so Trina could finish business school, and what her mother would say if she knew her daughter had stayed quiet about something like this out of fear for her own paycheck. I'm prepared, Trina says and signs her name. What Trina's statement uncovers isn't just the wedding sabotage. It's a pattern stretching back 4 years, expense reports padded with vendors who don't exist, invoices routed through shell companies registered to addresses that turn out to be storage units, board meeting minutes quietly altered after the fact to soften language Gareth didn't like reading back to himself. None of it was ever about the wedding. The wedding was simply the first time Gareth got careless enough to leave fingerprints where his own assistant could see them. Callan learns the full scope of it in his office 2 weeks before the trial, a forensic accountant named Desiree Alcott walking him through spreadsheets that trace over $3 million quietly diverted from a company his father spent 30 years building. Desiree spreads 3 years of records across the conference table, color-coded tabs, marking every falsified invoice, every shell company registered under names close enough to real vendors that nobody double-checking a budget would think twice. She spent 6 weeks reconstructing a paper trail Gareth clearly believed no one would ever bother following. He's been doing this since before your father passed, Desiree tells him, sliding a final page across the desk. The wedding sabotage, all of it, that's almost incidental compared to what we found buried underneath it. Callan sits with that for a long moment, feeling something shift in his chest that isn't quite grief and isn't quite fury, something closer to the particular exhaustion of finally understanding a betrayal that's been happening for years without a name attached to it. Thinks about every family dinner Gareth sat through, every holiday, every moment he mistook for closeness that was apparently just proximity to money he'd already started Stealing. Does the board know? He asks. They will by end of day, Desiree says. I'd recommend you be the one to tell them before someone else does it for you. The boardroom on the day Callan delivers the news looks nothing like it did the morning. Gareth slammed his hand on the table over missed meetings. 11 board members sit in careful silence as Callan walks them through 4 years of stolen money, laid out in numbers too precise to argue with. Nobody interrupts him. Nobody reaches for their phone. The only sound in the room is the occasional shuffle of paper as Callan turns to the next page. Marlon Whitfield, seated near the head of the table, doesn't look surprised. He looks like a man watching a suspicion he's carried for years finally confirmed out loud, the kind of quiet vindication that carries no satisfaction with it at all. I want to vote, Callan says, closing the folder in front of him. Full removal from the board, effective today, and full cooperation with federal investigators moving forward. The vote passes unanimously. Not one hand stays down. Even the 2 board members who'd sided with Gareth in that meeting weeks earlier raised their hands without hesitation. The loyalty they showed him that morning apparently thinner than either of them realized. Until now. 6 weeks later, Nia sits in the 3rd row of a federal courtroom, Callan's hand tight around hers, watching Gareth Mercer stand at a defense table in a suit that no longer fits the confidence it used to carry. His lawyer whispers something in his ear. He doesn't react. Been staring at the same spot on the floor since the proceedings began. The prosecutor lays it out methodically, exhibit after exhibit, testimony from Trina Boyd. Delivered in a voice that doesn't waver once, testimony from vendors who admit, under oath, to accepting cash for sabotaging a wedding they had no personal stake in ruining. The florist, called to the stand on the second morning, breaks down in tears halfway through her account, apologizing directly to Nia from the witness box in a moment that leaves half the courtroom reaching for tissues. Julian Carter, the young wedding planner Gareth threatened weeks before the ceremony, testifies with his hands folded tight in his lap, describing exactly how a man he worked for made it clear his job depended on ruining a stranger's wedding. I've thought about that day every single week since, he tells the courtroom. I'm not proud of what I did. I want that on the record. When Gareth finally speaks, called to the stand near the end of the second day, his voice comes out smaller than anyone in that courtroom has ever heard it. I spent my whole life watching my father tell me I'd inherit half of everything, he says, staring somewhere past the prosecutor's shoulder. Then my uncle died and left the whole thing to a 20-year-old who barely knew how to run a department, let alone a company. Told myself I deserved better. I told myself so many times I started believing it. And when your cousin found a woman he loved, the prosecutor asks, a woman with no fortune, no name, nothing you considered worthy of your family, what did you tell yourself? Then, Gareth's jaw tightens. I told myself I was protecting something. A legacy. My uncle's life. Work. Did stealing $3 million from that legacy protect it? He doesn't answer right away. The silence stretches long enough that even the court reporter's fingers still over the keyboard, waiting. No, Gareth finally says. It didn't protect anything. It just made me exactly the kind of man my father always worried I'd become. Did believing you deserved better, the prosecutor presses, give you the right to steal from the company, or to hire people to destroy an innocent woman's wedding? Gareth doesn't answer that question. He doesn't have an answer that survives being said out loud. The judge, a woman named Renata Ashford who has presided over corporate fraud cases for 11 years and rarely shows much on her face during testimony, delivers her sentence. 3 days later, the courtroom sits in total silence as she reads through the findings, her voice measured and unhurried, the kind of calm that carries more weight than shouting ever could. Mr. Mercer, she says, looking directly at Gareth for the first time in the entire proceeding, you had every advantage a person could ask for. Education, opportunity, a family name. That opened doors most people never see. You chose to use all of it to steal from the people who trusted you and to attack a woman whose only offense was being loved by your cousin. This court does not take that lightly. 8 years, restitution in full, a lifetime ban from serving on any corporate board in the state. Gareth doesn't look at Callan when the verdict comes down. He looks at Nia instead. One long, unreadable look before the bailiff leads him out of the courtroom, and whatever he means by it, she decides she doesn't need to know. Outside the courthouse, reporters cluster near the steps, cameras raised, questions overlapping into noise, shouting Nia's name and Callan's name in the same breath as the word scandal. Callan doesn't stop to answer any of them, guiding Nia through the crowd. With a hand at the small of her back, both of them silent until they're finally sitting in the back of a car pulling away from the building that held 8 years of someone else's greed. Inside 4 walls, the city moves past the window in a blur of familiar streets, the clinic where they met. Somewhere off to the left, the community center where Odessa still teaches a puzzle class. Every other Thursday somewhere behind them. Nia watches it all pass without really seeing any of it, her mind still caught somewhere back in that courtroom on Gareth's face. In the moment before the bailiff led him away. "It's over," Callan says quietly, more to himself than to her. Nia looks out the window at the courthouse shrinking behind them, thinking about a folded $100 bill she still keeps in a drawer at home, thinking about a ribbon her grandmother tied with shaking hands on a morning that feels like a lifetime ago. She thinks about every guest who laughed that day, about how many of them reached out quietly in the weeks after, apologizing in emails she never bothered replying to, because some apologies matter less than what a person chooses to build once the cameras stop watching. "No," she says. "It's just starting." The line outside the Odessa Rowan Foundation wraps twice around the block before the doors even open, and Nia watches it from the second-floor window with a mug of coffee going cold in her hands. Below, the morning crowd shifts and murmurs, strollers and folding chairs scattered along the sidewalk for people who arrived hours before dawn just to secure a spot near the front. A volunteer moves down the line handing out water bottles and granola bars, the same volunteer who used to work the front desk at the clinic where Nia spent her 20s, holding strangers' hands through the worst days of their lives. 6 months since the courtroom. 6 months since a jury watched Gareth Mercer's confidence collapse into something smaller than anyone in that family ever imagined possible. In that time, the foundation, named after a woman who raised a granddaughter alone on a cafeteria salary, has funded medical bills for 211 families, covered rent for 86 people one missed paycheck away from losing their homes, and put a mechanic named Desmond Fields on the board of directors, a seat he accepted only after Nia promised him it didn't require a suit he'd have to borrow. Welcome back for anyone just joining this story at the very end. What started as a woman getting laughed at for her torn sandals has turned into something far bigger than one wedding, one family, or one act of cruelty ever could have predicted. Stick with me, because the way this story closes is exactly the kind of ending you'll want to carry with you. Now, back to the window. Downstairs, Odessa sits behind a small desk near the entrance, greeting every single person who walks through the door personally, the way she's insisted on doing since the foundation opened its doors 4 months ago. Her hands still shake. Her voice still carries the same steady warmth that carried across that kitchen table 30 years ago, and every person who sits across from her leaves the conversation feeling like they mattered to someone, because they did. Nia comes downstairs just as a young mother reaches the front of the line, a toddler balanced on her hip, eyes red from crying before she even sits down. The toddler tugs at his mother's collar, oblivious to the fear sitting behind her eyes, and Nia recognizes the same posture she's seen hundreds of times now, shoulders braced for rejection before anyone's even said a word. "I don't know where else to go," the woman says, voice cracking. "My husband's hospital bills, they're going to take the house if I can't." "You came to the right place," Nia says, kneeling down so she's eye level with the toddler, offering a small smile that seems to calm the child instantly. "Let's figure this out together." It's a sentence she said hundreds of times now, in dozens of variations, to strangers who walk through these doors carrying the same kind of fear she used to see every day at the clinic. The difference now is what she's able to hand them when she says it. Within 20 minutes, the woman leaves with a case number, a direct line to a caseworker, and a promise that someone will call her husband's hospital by end of day, her shoulders visibly loosening for the first time since she walked in. Callan finds her there an hour later, leaning against the doorframe, watching his wife work a room the same way she worked a folding table at a community clinic 2 years ago, before either of them knew what the other one was capable of. Board meeting ran long. he says when she finally looks up. Marlon wants to expand the foundation into 3 more states by next year. Marlon always wants to expand something, Nia says, laughing. He's not wrong this time. Callan crosses the room, resting a hand at the small of her back. The way he has since that first Sunday coffee 2 years ago. There's something else. Letter came for you today. From the courthouse. Nia's stomach tightens instinctively, an old reflex from 6 months of subpoenas and testimony and headlines she stopped reading halfway through. Callan hands her the envelope and she opens it standing right there in the middle of the lobby, scanning the first few lines twice before she fully understands what she's reading. Gareth Mercer, from a federal correctional facility 2 states away, has requested that any future restitution payments beyond his court-ordered amount be directed to the Odessa Rowan Foundation. No explanation, no apology attached, just a single signed line at the bottom of an otherwise empty page. Nia reads it a 3rd time, feeling something complicated settle in her chest. Not quite forgiveness, not quite anything she has a clean word for yet. She thinks about the look he gave her in that courtroom, the one she decided she didn't need to understand, and wonders if this letter is his own attempt at understanding something he couldn't say out loud that day. What do you want to do with it? Callan asks, watching her carefully, ready to support whatever answer she gives. Accept it, Nia says after a long moment. Not because he deserves the chance to feel better about himself, because every dollar that comes through that door helps somebody who needs it more than his guilt does. Callan nods, unsurprised, because it's exactly the answer he expected from the woman who once handed a stranger a spool of paper towels and a cup of clinic coffee without asking his name first. That evening, the foundation empties out, staff filing home one by one, the last families of the day walking out with folders and phone numbers, and, for the first time in longer than they can remember, a plan instead of just fear. Nia locks the front door behind the final visitor and finds Odessa still sitting at her desk, sorting through a stack of thank you cards left behind over the past week. You built something real, baby, Odessa says, not looking up from the cards. Bigger than a wedding. Bigger than any of it. We built it, Nia corrects her. Every lesson at that kitchen table. Every stitch. Every Sunday you told me character earns respect. It's all sitting in these walls whether your name's on the sign or not. Odessa's eyes glisten, and for once, she doesn't have a saying ready to cover it. She just reaches over and takes her granddaughter's hand, the same way she's taken it through every hard morning since Nia was 7 years old, sitting at a table built for 4. Your mother would have been proud, Odessa says quietly. I don't say that enough. Should say it more. You don't have to say it, Nia says. You lived it every single day instead. That's better than saying it ever could have been. Outside, the sun is setting over a city that watched a woman get mocked for a torn pair of sandals and later watched that same woman build something that will outlast every person who laughed that morning. Nia stands at the window one more time, watching the last of the daylight stretch long shadows across the courtyard below, thinking about every version of herself that got her here. The girl who skipped her own graduation. The clinic coordinator who called 3 mechanics on her lunch break for a stranger. The bride who kept walking with a ribbon tied around a broken strap because stopping was never an option worth considering. She thinks about all the people who laughed that morning, most of whom she'll never see again, and realizes she doesn't carry any of them the way she once thought she might. What she carries instead is a line outside a building with her grandmother's name on it, rapping twice around the block every single morning, full of people who needed somebody to believe they mattered before anyone asked what they were worth. Character earns respect. It always has. It always will. And if you've made it this far with us, this is exactly the kind of story that deserves to reach more people who need to hear it. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one, because there's always another story of quiet strength meeting real justice waiting right around the corner. Drop a comment and tell me which moment stayed with you the most, because someone reading this right now needs to know their own torn sandals don't define what they're worth. Share this with someone who needs a reminder today. Until the next story, take care of each other.